it did strike me as the place where there's no bike snobbery. Like you can turn up on whatever you want and you know that nobody's going to go, oh, good luck on that today.
Yeah, exactly. And that's a good thing.
Yeah, if anything, I felt out of place on that. I felt like, oh, I'm on a sort of racing.
You're overdressed.
Yeah, basically, yeah, exactly. Well, yeah, essentially, yeah.
Welcome back to the Talk It Out podcast. My name's Dan from UK Bike Fit, and we're back with Triathlon Dan. Jen has done an amazing job standing in for Dan whilst you had some tooth surgery, right?
Don't ask me about that.
Okay, we'll not go there.
I'll start fainting.
But by no one's popular demand, we've got Dan back today for another podcast. So we're going to talk about Audaxing. Now, we did a video a while back, another podcast, and if you've not watched that or listened to that, go and check it out. On cycling events in the UK, and we didn't mention Audaxing. And we got a couple of requests in the comments saying, oh, you didn't mention Audaxing, which was, on us, but we had not done an Audax or never considered doing an Audax, or we didn't consider Audax as a organised event. So you have gone off and done some quality research.
Yes.
And you're going to come back with some thoughts on Audaxing.
Yeah, so I thought this was our first faux pas on the channel. We entirely didn't
first
mention.
Hate mail.
Yeah, didn't mention a whole type of event because we hadn't done them. And I said to Dan, I feel like we should address this in a video. And he sent me back that clip of, Conor McGregor when he says, so he said, I'd like to take this chance to apologise to absolutely no one. That's what Dan said. Anyway, I didn't say that. I said that I'm going to go and do one of these Audaxes and give it a go. So thank you, Dan, for funding the whole thing. I know because it relates to the podcast, I get to claim everything back on expenses.
Sure.
I went and did an Audax in Alfreton. It was called Straight On at Rosie's Part 2 or Version 2. I imagine there was a Straight On at Rosie's Version 1 event. It was 200 kilometres. There were 35 starters. I had a great day, and I want to tell you all about it, as well as my impressions of the sport of Audaxing.
Sure. So tell us a little bit about what the Audax is and where you went and how long it was, and a bit about the route first.
So an Audax is like an organised ride, but it is non-competitive, and it is similar to a Sportive, I think, but I would say the level of support is low, but that's what you're paying for. It's a low entry cost. So I think it cost me £11 for the event. It's cheaper if you become an Audax member. I'm not a member. I think that's £10 or £15 a year, something like that. It was in Alfreton, so very close to where I live. I was able to ride to the start. We met in a village hall. Some people signed you on. You got a what's the booklet called? Brevet card. You can also use an app.
Is it brevet?
I don't know. There might be a little accent in there somewhere.
Yeah, I just emphasised it.
Yeah, and it wasn't it didn't feel like a big event, but it was really welcoming. So when I got there, the people signing me in, I said, it's my first time doing an Audax, what do I need to know? They talked me through the card, what I need to do. A couple of other people at the event talked me through the same sort of thing as well. That was brilliant. And then, I forget what exactly you asked. I'm in danger of going into talking about the whole event.
What was the route like? How far was it? And what
so the route
did you have to do along the route?
Okay, so the route was across Nottinghamshire and then up a bit. So it was 100k out, and it was almost an hour back.
We've got a whole horde of international listeners now from all over the globe.
Yeah.
They don't know where Nottinghamshire is.
So when you think, when people from overseas talk about England, they say, oh, London. That is the capital of the UK, of England. However, Derbyshire is the actual capital. Next to Derbyshire is Nottinghamshire, which is predominantly flat. So we had to cycle 10 miles or so of undulating terrain. There was about 2,000 feet of climbing in those 10 miles. And then in the remaining 45 miles to the turnaround point, there was about 300. So it was hilly to start and then flat. We had a tailwind all the way out, and then of course it's the same in reverse. It didn't follow exactly the same route on the way back, but it was similar. So we had 45 miles of flat with a headwind on the way back, and then 10-15 miles of hills. There were a few things to do on the route, Dan, which I didn't expect all of them. So Audaxers, I understand it that they have checkpoints because Audaxers are run for years and years, like pre-Strava, pre-GPS units, that sort of thing. So in order to prove that you've been to these certain points, you had to get a receipt from somewhere, because that's how else could you prove where you've been. Some places do photos as well, I think. So there were several checkpoints, or controls as they're called in the Audax world. There's different types of controls. There's self-controls. I have no self-control in shops, but there's self-control. There is a manned control, which there was one at the turnaround point. So on the way out, I had to stop once and get a receipt from a post office or a garden centre. I bought a can of Pepsi, and that was my control on the way out.
And a houseplant.
And a house pint, yep. It might explain my average pace. And at the turnaround point, there were 2 volunteers manning the control station, and they would stamp your book at the turnaround. They had a big jug of water, some malt loaves, some snacks and refreshments if you wanted them. More than anything, it was just a pat on the back and turn around and get yourself back. So that was the control for that. On the way back, I think it followed the River Trent, and to make sure that we went on the correct side of it, there were 2 controls. One of them was another self one, so you just go to a shop and buy something. And another one was an information control, which I hadn't seen on the information that went out about the event. I don't know if they didn't put it out there to prevent people cheating or not, but I don't remember seeing it. It might have been on there. It was in the brevet card there, about 140 kilometres. You had to write down how many miles it was from one place to another. That was on a sign in a certain place. I didn't have a pen with me, and I didn't want to stop and write on my phone, so I just remember how many miles it was. It was 3. So they're checking that you're following that correct route. And then you ride back to the finish, and the same sort of thing at the finish. They control you. They actually spent a good couple of minutes going through my receipts and looking at the times, because there were certain times you had to be within the checkpoints at, as well as the stamp from the turnaround, and as well as the information thing. And I said, I haven't written it down, but it's 3. Like, okay. Then they added it to the card, and then you get your card back, and it's like, yep, your ride's been approved. So that's the admin involved with doing an Audax.
Intense.
Yeah, I mean, it is. It felt intense, and if I'm honest, when I was doing it, I sort of felt like, I don't want to stop now. I want to keep riding now, and I want to stop when I want to stop. But when I was talking to people, that's just part of the challenge of Audaxing. That's part of what's involved. I suppose it's a bit like orienteering. You might go to somewhere and find a book or a page or something, and go something else. It's just part of the challenge. And I can see how some strategy might come into play, because the first control, you had the choice between a post office and a garden centre. I started at the post office because I thought it was going to be quicker to get in and out than in a garden centre. Trying to find something to buy in a garden centre, park with your bike, all that sort of stuff. It's not a race, but I can see how these things become a bit more tactical.
So why do you want it to be quicker? To get it done with, or to actually get a fit?
I was on my own at that time, and a couple of my friends had dropped me, and I thought I might catch them up if I save some time in the first control.
All right, so it was for time purposes rather than...
Yeah, not in terms of I want to be faster overall. It was just to try and catch up somebody else.
Okay.
I didn't.
So that's the purpose of Audax then. So how did you find the event, and how did it differ from other stuff that you'd done before?
Okay, the event is probably the most low-key thing I've ever done. I've done club time trials, I've done Sportives. They all feel like more of a celebration. When you do a time trial, you're crossing a line. When you're doing a Sportive, you're often crossing a line. This is very anticlimactic in that you just roll into a car park, put your bike up against a wall, and you go into Village Hall to get your thing signed. And it's hard to describe. This feels like there's a real strong spirit in the Audax community. So everybody I spoke to on the ride all had the time to talk to you. You know what it's like out cycling sometimes. You go like that, and sometimes you get a wave back, sometimes you don't, because people are training and they're serious and all that. Everybody spoke to me, and I asked them no end of questions about, what does Audaxing mean to you? Why do you do these events? How long have you done them before? Such welcoming people. And that, I think, really is just part of the community. And I got the impression that that's what you have to be like to be in the Audax community. I never once heard somebody talking about what bike you ride in, what tyres you picked. It was me asking those questions. I think they don't care. I think it's just more about us doing this thing together. And like I said earlier, 35 starters, not a huge field. You'd see people riding together, you see different people riding together. They're sort of sheltering each other into the wind, they're supporting each other and so on. So I got the real sense that there was a real good, strong sense of community in this thing.
I mean, when we get bikes in for bike fits as well, with riders who do Audax, the bikes are very much built for purpose, aren't they? It's not like your classic flashy cycling type nature where it's spend the most money, get the best paint job, get all your carbon components matching and all the rest of it. The bikes are fit for purpose. They're there to do a job, which is long distance, almost heavy duty, built for anything kind of thing. It's not about who's got the most aero bike or whatever. So it's totally against everything at the moment that is very big in cycling, and in a good way.
Yeah.
A good way. It sort of represents a different type of cyclist, I think.
I mean, there was a range though. So I had a good look around the bikes at the beginning, took some B-roll as well. Chris might overlay now if you ask him very nicely. There was a lot of sort of Dolans are quite a popular brand. Winter bikes. I think it might have been the time of year, whether we'd see a different type of bike at these events in the summer or not, I don't know. Panniers and like behind saddlebags were quite popular. The tail fin things were quite popular. But there were a couple of bikes that were, you know, modern, wide tubeless tyres, wide rims, big range cassettes and so on. But they just weren't, like the gentleman I spent a lot of time riding with on the way back, big clearance, mud guards, big tyres, big gears, but it wasn't necessarily high spec. It wasn't, I don't think it was Di2, but he absolutely thought, yeah, this is comfy, I like riding this. But then on the way out, I was riding with a gentleman who rode bikes 20 years ago, packed up to have kids and family and other things in life, and then pulled that same bike out the loft and now does Audaxing on that bike. And that's probably got 20 mil tubular tyres on and a short cassette, but he was doing it on that as well. Like it's just a wide range.
I think you definitely see that type of bike more there. Whereas if you compare that to a Sportive, say, which is out in terms of events, that's probably like the most close comparison to an Audax is a Sportive. You will see more like carbon frames, aero wheels, aero bikes, you know, a bit more performance-y type stuff. Whereas Audaxing, steel frames, you know, like panniers, all the rest of it, like kitted out with sort of for all weather sort of stuff. That is the type of bike that you probably see more of.
It did strike me as the place where there's no bike snobbery. Like you can turn up on whatever you want and you know that nobody's going to go, oh, good luck on that today.
Yeah, exactly. And that's a good thing.
Yeah, if anything, I felt out of place on that. I felt like, oh, I'm on a sort of racing.
You're overdressed.
Yeah, basically, yeah, exactly. Well, yeah, essentially.
Yeah. Okay, so in that sense then, was the differences that you noticed then, did you think that was a good thing for you or a bad thing, or did you enjoy it, or like what was the overall impression of the whole?
I enjoyed it. I did it because it was so local to me. I was in a little bit of disbelief that people travel so far for these things. There was a guy from Wakefield, there's someone else from somewhere up north, and when I'm talking to them, they've been, I did this one last week, or there's an achievement for if you do a 200k a month in a year, every month in a year, you get a recognition or an achievement. People are telling me I'm a randonneur now, because if you're doing a 200k Audax, you get the title of randonneur, and there's another one at 300 and 400 and 500, 600 and so on. So there's this whole like achievements thing within it. I really liked it being low key because it was so low cost. It's not a big focus event. It's just okay, I'll go and do this thing and I enjoy doing it. I've not spent the earth doing it. I do really like the big events where it's a big song and dance and there's a finish line and all of that. But I think that they're completely different and they're not trying to do the same thing. And Audax is not trying to be one of those big events. So therefore, you're not going to measure it against it. I would really, really recommend Audaxing to anybody who wants a training ride for anything. My two friends that came with me are good club cyclists and they were the fastest there by quite a way. So they essentially rode it and didn't ride with other people who were doing the Audax. They still had a great time and they've not negatively impacted anybody else's ride other than me trying to hang on to them for a few miles. But people further back being able to mix and mingle and talk about and share these experiences and so on, whilst not being any pressure. Like on the way back, me and a couple of the guys were, sharing the work into the wind, and if one person dropped off, we just ease up a bit and then just get back on again. Whereas I'm used to on the club ride, Saxby's dropped off, let's get the hammer down. It's really different, but honestly, I really thought it was really good.
Would you do another one then?
I didn't think so initially. I was in quite a lot of pain. It was quite a long way. I was on the bike for nearly 9 hours. So it was a long old time. But now I've reflected on it. There's another one in a couple of weeks. I think I will. Because it's just so easy to do, as in terms of like getting there. Okay, so
different question then. If you've got, because we've both done Sportives before, and as I say, that's probably the direct comparison to an Audax is a Sportive, or the closest comparison. So if you had the choice between doing Sportives all year and you couldn't do anything else, or Audaxes all year and you couldn't do anything else, which one would you choose?
I would probably choose Audaxes because they seem a bit more extreme in terms of the challenge. Like they're 2, 3, 4, 5. There's a 600k one in June from near here. Sportives, I'm assuming more expensive. We're talking 40 odd quid for a Sportive.
Yeah.
I think Audaxing just remains that more entry level price point, and I would definitely still do that. I think I've seen Not that it was bad in any way, but I've been to a 200-kilometre Audax in sketchy weather in February in the UK. There's probably better events and bigger numbers and nicer days out on a bike in the summer. So I would think I'd go to an Audax in the summer, and I might even see it even better. There might be 60 starters, and you're riding with more people.
Yeah,
I think I don't know why would I pay an extra £30 to go and do a Sportive? I can't think of why, other than there's food stations, but you're stopping at shops on an Audax anyway, so it doesn't really matter.
Yeah, so you get any food sort of provided for you, but I think a lot of people also just have their own nutrition and their own food and their own preferences and that sort of thing anyway. A lot of people won't take what the Sportive offers them because they've got their own thing that they're using. So I think a lot of the value goes missing really.
Yeah. One thing I did want to reference as well is that it does seem that Audaxes are ran predominantly by volunteers. You guess there's not much profit in the entry fee versus how much it costs to even just hire a village hall for a day. Like I know there's a couple £100. The people that are running it, brilliant. They're clearly interested in cycling. There was a man and a lady at the turnaround point, stood in a freezing cold car park, blowing a gale all day to stamp our book and send us back on our way. They'd driven out from Alfton in the morning. Absolutely excellent. There's probably so many examples of people like that. I think with the Sportive and more organised event world, some of them have volunteers, but most of them are staff and for-profit entities, and it's just a different vibe. And somebody's there because they want to be there, and they're supporting cycling in the area. I also think a bit of an obligation to go and try and support it. Like I made a video, it's done a couple of thousand views about it. I really like making videos about that sort of thing because I think if more people went and did it, it makes it more sustainable because more people are paying the entry money and so on. So hopefully more people can go and do it. And I know we have people like Amy Cycling Adventures who has a massive platform, has done loads of Audaxes. I don't doubt she's probably had a massive positive impact on the Audax community.
So do you know how many people entered that Audax?
I don't know how many entered. There were 35 starters, so you'd probably say 35 to 40 entries.
Yeah.
And it was quite sparse out on the road sometimes. You wouldn't see anybody for a while. But 35 for 200k in February is pretty decent.
Yeah, in the early season, if you have done any Audaxing or have any opinions on Audax or, really like Audax or really don't like Audax for whatever reason, let us know in the comments below what your thoughts are. I'd be really interested to know. And maybe we'll see Triathlon Dan out. Many Audaxes later.
Also, if there's any other types of cycling event in the UK that you think might be interesting or we haven't spoke about, we don't know what we don't know, do we? So let us know in the comment section down below, and we'd be happy to give something a go if it's within range. And if not, I'll be tapping into the UK Bike Fit budget once again.
Very low-key events then.
Yeah. Cool. Thanks, Dan.
Drop us a like, subscribe to the channel if you want to hear more of this, and then we'll see you in the next one.